Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from round 10 of the 2019 Sinquefield Cup. It's another game that features another very active piece by Nepo, which we're gonna see very soon. So without further ado, let's check it out and then we're gonna fully enjoy the standings. So Nepo with the white pieces opens with the reti. We have knight to f3. Sorry about that, that was really loud. We have c5 by black, inviting either to a Sicilian or to an English. We have c4 by Nepo, and then now knight to f6. We have knight to c3, d5 by black, challenging the center immediately. C captures on d5, knight captures on d5, and then now e4. And here knight to b4. So what do you want to do here with white? Bishop to b5 check, with knight 8 to c6, and now d4 just nicely developing. With c captures on d4, and now a very nice pawn sacrifice by Nepo, a3. With d captures on c3, queen captures on d8 with check, king captures on d8 as the knight is pinned, and a captures on b4. And now c captures on b2 with bishop captures on b2, and here f6, controlling the e5 square. Black would very much enjoy playing e5 here. So the f6 should support e5, but of course Nepo is not interested in allowing that. Nepo pushes e5 himself, and now bishop to d7. With bishop to c4 by Nepo, preparing e6. If black makes a silly move like a6, for example, then e6 just wins the game on the spot. Now, it doesn't really matter what you do. For example, if you go bishop c8, then b5 is very strong. You can't capture as you're going to lose the rook on a8. And if knight a7, then bishop d4 going for bishop b6. And black really doesn't have a move in this position. There is a game from 1979, Hans Bohm versus Jan Timman versus Hans Bohm, where Bohm played rook to c8 and Timman was able to win that game. But here we have e6 by Maxime, not allowing, of course, white to push e6 himself. And here Nepo just castles. So e6 was a new move in the position. So as of move 13, we have a completely new game. Nepo castles into this, and now bishop to e7. With b5 by Nepo, asking what do you do with the knight. There aren't all that many squares the knight can go to. If you go to b4, then knight to d4 is very strong. You go after the e6 pawn. Maxime decides to capture with knight captures on e5, and now do you want to capture with the knight or with the bishop? Nepo captures with the bishop, which seems odd. You usually want to keep your bishop pair, but the thing is, if you capture with the knight, you get f captures on e5 and bishop captures, and then bishop to f6. And now, for example, you can either trade, or if you don't want to trade to improve on black's pawn structure, you can go rook ad1. Hopefully, after black captures here, you can win a pawn and then win the bishop on d7. But black will move, let's say, king e8, and now you get rook fe1. A bishop captures on e5, rook captures, and now after king to e7, it will be very hard for white to look for anything more here than a draw. Even if you win this pawn, it's not a problem. Let's say rook d1, you're just going to go rook he8. And now after, let's say, a trade, bishop captures, and rook captures, you're just going to move the king. And even though you do seem to be more active than black, still has a very inactive rook on a8. You can't really trade rooks. You have to move, and then black can really just trade one pair of rooks and bring the other into the game. If you trade, then it's actually black who's better here. Your king will just pick up this pawn, and then you will use your king to control the king side pawns, while your two connected pass pawns on the queen side should win you the game. So, after knight captures on e5, Nepo decides not to capture with the knight, as we've just seen that you don't really have anything there. And as Nepo is playing white here, he probably prepared for this. Bishop captures on e5. With f captures on e5, and now rook f to d1 first. There's always time to recapture. First, you're going to try and win a piece here. So, king e8, you don't want your king on the same file as white's rook on d1. And only now knight captures on e5. With bishop back to c8, your bishop is under attack. You can't really move it anywhere else. So bishop back to c8, and now b6. Really playing very actively here for his sacrifice pawn. Nepo is really making Maxime find some very tough ideas. And look at Maxime's pieces here. They really aren't doing all that much. So you cannot capture, of course, as you would lose the rook here. The problem is, if you play a6, this also doesn't work. But it's a very nice idea. So feel free to pause the video and try to find what Nepo had in mind had Maxime played a6. While I give you a couple of seconds. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent finder of winning ideas in positions that never happened. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to b5 with check. And now there's a problem. What do you do here? You can't go to the d file, the rook controls there, the knight controls f7, you can go king f8, but now bishop to a4, just getting the bishop out of harm's way, and black has no moves. You can't get the rook into the game, you can't develop the bishop to get the rook into the game, you can't get this rook into the game, you can't move the king. So it's sort of a zugzwang, not an actual one, but whatever you do, you will ruin your position. For example, if you try bishop g5 to maybe free the e7 square for king f4, just wins again. You cannot capture because rook f1 just wins the bishop. You can go bishop to f6, but now rook a c1, and you can never move the king, otherwise, or if you capture here, if you capture on e5, you get rook d8 check and you win the rook on h8. So whatever black does, black really has no moves. So this, in fact, if this happened, this would be like some sort of a brilliant zugzwang that Nepo planned out. But it didn't happen. After b6, of course, Maxime did not play a6. He, of course, saw that the bishop to b5 was still a threat, so he played bishop to c5, which makes sense. You're ready to recapture on a7, should white capture on a7, and also you're freeing the e7 square for your king. Bishop to b5 check, this still goes, king to e7, and here is where the fun really starts. Here Nepo had a very interesting idea, knight to c6 check, and after b captures, bishop captures, so a temporarily sacrificed knight, where you would either lose the rook or you have to give back a piece by playing bishop to b7. And the game continues. For example, if you try to save the rook, just b captures on a7 is better for white. You will either have to capture the pawn, or, I mean, you don't want to allow white to bring a queen into the game. You have to move the rook. So here you would have to give up your dark square bishop, and after rook captures, white would just have a much better game. But Nepo did not play knight to c6 check, as you've seen from the thumbnail. Nepo played knight to d7, and it's a really funny move, but it's funny for a very specific reason. It's funny because it loses the game. White loses the game. Again, feel free to pause the video and try to figure out why knight to d7 loses the game. While I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations for punishing such a wild knight move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, bishop to d6. And it really makes sense. I mean, the knight has no retreat squares. The bishop now covers the c5 square where the knight actually wanted to go in the first place. It covers e5, and, well, there are no other squares. The pawn is on b6, so there is no move for this knight. Nepo finds a way how to save the knight. You could try giving away the exchange. For example, king captures, rook d1 check, king moves, and then you can get the knight back into the game. But after a captures on b6, you're down the exchange, and also you're down 2 pawns, so black would be completely winning here. But Nepo finds an interesting idea on how to save this knight. Rook a to c1. And now the idea is, and this is, well, what Nepo was hoping for, that if black just goes for the piece right away, then you play bishop captures, king captures, and rook c7 check. And now the bishop is pinned, you cannot capture it, you have to move the king, king e8, and now you win back the piece. And after a captures here, you will play h4, make some room for your king, and then you're gonna pick up, well, the pawns here and have a much better position where black still has to figure out how to develop the rooks. So this was Nepo's idea, but after rook a to c1, Maxime just played rook to d8. So now Nepo has a retreat square for his knight, but he's gonna be left with a much worse endgame. So knight to c5 was played. Nepo has to play it, otherwise you're just gonna lose a piece now. Bishop captures on c5, rook captures on d8. King captures, and now rook captures on c5. But now just a captures on b6, and now you get this position where Maxime is just up 2 pawns. Nepo had a brilliant position because he sacrificed a pawn, very active play, but now Maxime just grabbed another pawn, and now you no longer have such a great position, but you're down 2 pawns. Rook back to c1, you have to guard against the back rank mating ideas, and then now rook to a5, kicking away the bishop. Rook to b1, hoping to keep the bishop there, but now bishop to d7. Again, you still can't, I mean, you're not really gaining anything. If you trade bishop captures, king captures, you cannot capture on b6, or rook to a1 is again mate. So bishop to d3, and now comes h6, not allowing this capture. With rook captures on b6, now okay, you can retreat with the bishop. Bishop to f1 is possible, and now comes rook to a1 check. Bishop to f1, and now okay, the rook is guarding the b5 square, so bishop to b5 is not possible. King to c7, pushing the rook back, so now you're ready to start pushing your past b pawn. With rook to b2, and now b5. Now the king will start entering the game. f3, Nepo also has to start bringing his king into the game. King b6, with king to f2, and now bishop to c6. With bishop to c4, the pawn is pinned here, so you cannot capture the bishop. And now e5. This pawn was being threatened, so here you just defend it. Bishop back to d3, and now rook to a3. Pressuring the bishop, bishop back to b1, and now rook to c3. Now the king can also enter the game via the c file or via the a file, and also the rook is preventing the king from becoming more active. With king to e2, and now rook to c4. Preparing rook to b4, preparing pawn to b4 from there, while the rook defends it from b4. King to d2 by Nepo, and now b4. With bishop to a2, and now rook just moves, rook d4 check, with king to c1, and now e4. With f captures on e4, rook captures on e4, and now g3, whereas now bishop to b5 comes into play. And now the white king is, really not all that great there. The black king will also join in, and the pawn on b4 will start going even further down the board. With king to d1 by Nepo, and now king to c5, with rook to f2, but now bishop to c4. Bishop to c4 is a very important move in the sense of improving the position, because this bishop and pawn really create a nice wall here against the white king, and the white king will never be able to approach this position. Also, you're asking, do you maybe want to trade bishops? Of course, white is not interested in that. Bishop to b1, attacking the rook, rook to e7. With king to d2, and now rook to f7, offering a trade, and it was in this position that Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, and a very nice victory for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who I really don't think he had any hopes of scoring a full point in this game. Maybe he was hoping that he could, hold on to his passive position and draw the game, but to be awarded such a full point by Nepo playing knight to d7 is just really insane. Here, okay, we can play it out after rook to f7. You can't go here, the bishop guards this square, you can't trade rooks, otherwise the bishop and pawn endgame is winning for black, as black is up a pawn, and you could go rook g2, for example, but if this, then just king d4. You're gonna go king c2, then comes king e3, hoping for rook f2 check to trade rooks, and after rook g1, still you get rook f2 check, king to c1, of course this wall is still here, king to c1, and now b3, whereas you can now capture on h2, or if black does something about it, you're getting checkmated. Sorry, if white does something about it. For example, if you prevent the capture, then b2 check, you move the king, and now rook to e2, preparing the deadly bishop to b3. For example, if bishop to c2 blocking, you still get bishop to b3, and now there's no defense against a b1 queen. The bishop will be unable to recapture the queen because it's pinned, and of course if you capture, then you no longer guard the b1 square. You can also grab a rook, since that is much nicer to checkmate with less material. But yeah, this is after this rook to f7 move, Nepo resigned, as there was really nothing more to do here. So really insane idea, and it's insane how Nepo is playing this tournament. The two losses came from Anand in round 1, where he completely blundered in the endgame. It was an even bigger blunder than this one. I mean, they're both equally big since they both lose games, but I don't know. The one against Anand just seems bigger. But yeah, other than that, still being up there in the top after two such blunders really shows what an exciting and great player Jan Nepomniachtchi is, and it's always awesome watching all of his games. So now you're gonna understand the standings a bit more. There you have it. Nepo still with 5.5 points as he did going into this game. Maybe you haven't realized why this is so when we showed the standings in the previous video. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting in the final round, and we'll see what happens. If Ding, it's all up to Ding. He has the white pieces against Mamadjaro. If he wins, Ding wins the Sinquefield Cup. If not, then everyone has a chance. Not everyone, but obviously those with 5.5 points. So yeah. That was the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Jonathan Willis Jarvis, Paul Guest, and Steve Kimmins for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing the coverage of the Sinquefield Cup, of the final round. Maybe we're going to even show it today. Continuing the Capablanca saga after that, and of course checking up on your suggestions. And we're going to have a very nice puzzle. We haven't had a puzzle in a while, so stay tuned for that as well. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.